one night Julia was so wrapped up in one of her stories that she did not hear Sophie's parent come in. "Why is Sophie up so late?" asked her mother, angry. During Sophie's childhood, Jesus Christ was unpopular. Julia was so startled at their sudden arrival that she was unable to speak. Now you might ask, why would they be so nervous of her talking about Jesus? Because they would be in jeopardy. They had popular. They was well known in society themselves. They were wealthy people, and if they was caught saying anything about Jesus, because Jesus was banned from society now because of the one world government. So
this is still Sophia.
This is Sophia. Thank it back.
It's still a flashback.
I'm just flashback, but I'm just explaining why would the parents be that upset because Julia just talking about Jesus.
So that stood out in Sophia's mind. What happened that time?
All that happened in her mind. She's seeing her parents so angry, and she didn't understand why they so angry when she was in love with this Jesus. She loved Julia, and then they threatened Julia that if you ever, I would read that part. You ever spoke to my child again, and I will read that part right now. Okay, the next day Sophie saw Julia and said with love and happiness in her heart, giving her a warm smile, "Hi, Julia." Julia looked at her with sadness and went into her house without as much as a wave hello. What Sophie did not know was that her parents had gone over to Julia's house that same night. "Julia, if you ever said hello to my daughter again, I will call the police and say you are trying to control my daughter's thoughts." Sophie's mom threatened her. Julia did not answer because she knew the consequences of she could go to jail. But the next month, she moved. But so meanwhile, she lived next to parents were wealthy, and she lived in this house next door too, because she had money herself, even though she was a nanny, but she also was able to live in that residence. You might say, well, how could she live in the same residence with these rich people? She was, because she was a wealthy woman herself, but yet she loved her occupation as a nanny.
So that took place after the parents walked in and heard
her talking about Jesus. And why was her
so they fired her on the spot?
They fired on the spot. Of course, they didn't tell that to Sophia.
Right.
And so the next morning, Sophia, she.
So that night they went over to her house
and threatened her. She been asking not even hello,
okay.
And she knew that the danger of she could go to jail and maybe be executed.
Let me just follow this, okay?
Yeah.
Julia's babysitting Sophia.
She's a nanny.
Right.
She's more than a babysitter. She's actually a nanny, like a governess.
Okay, so Julia is the nanny for Sophia.
Right.
And she's having a good time singing church songs and stuff with Sophia.
Right.
The parents walked in early.
Yeah.
And they criticized Julia for teaching Sophia about God, about Jesus.
About Jesus Christ.
About Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ, yes.
Okay, so that's when all the commotion, I suppose to say, started.
Started, yes.
So they sent Sophia to her room, and then they started talking to Julia.
And that night went over to her house and said, you don't ever say even hello to her again.
Okay.
If we ever catch you. And some of the things she was talking about, Jesus was the Redeemer. Jesus the Redeemer. And this is very dangerous talk, because this Redeemer is the reason why there's conflicts with different wars of religion, because they couldn't accept this.
So Julia was telling that to Sophia.
This is some of the things she told her, that Jesus took your whooping for you, and now because he took the whooping by his blood, you could come to him and you become.
Is this you explaining it? That's in the book.
I'm explaining it to the reader right now.
Oh, that's not in the book.
All of this is not in the book. I didn't put all of it, but in my second book, I'm going to put it in when I do it over with my thesis.
So let me understand it. Okay. But one second. So while she's nannying, if there's such a word, Sophia, she's explaining the following. What you just said, she was doing what?
Yes, she explained all that to her.
All that was.
Yes.
Repeat all that. What was all that again?
Basically, she was from the time the child was little, 3 or 4 years old. But Sophia, this is what the thing is about. all these years, she's been telling this to Sophia.
Telling this is what?
This about Jesus Christ to Sophia all these years since she was 3, 4 years old.
She was telling Sophia about what?
About Jesus Christ.
Meaning?
That Jesus Christ is the Savior. He's the Redeemer. But Sophia would never speak to her mother and father about it because she wasn't close to them. She wouldn't even talk about stuff like that to them. She would see them. They would just like they would just. She was just in the house. They would do their business, go to hide, buy, never even hug. So you could see. She didn't even bother to talk to them, this little girl, Sophia, 3 or 4 and 5 years old, or 7, right now she's 7, you know, because you might say, well, all these years, why didn't she say something about Jesus to her parents? Because she just wasn't close to them. The parents came home, they did their business, and, you know, and hi, hello, never a hug. So it was just like strangers to her.
So when she had questions about Jesus, she would speak to
Julia, the nanny, because the nanny was also like her, you could say her mother. Her mother she loved. So you might say, this is why she was so bitter. All of a sudden, all of this was taken from her. And then she, then all of a sudden, you can imagine, the behavior of a 7-year-old. The woman lives next door, the nanny, for a whole month. And when Julia, like I said, I read, Julia speaks to her, and she don't even speak. And she...
For a whole month she didn't speak to her? Or she lived there only for 1 month?
She lived there a whole month. For a whole month, because it took time for Julia to find a place.
Where was she living before?
She was living next door to them.
Oh, so for 1 whole month she didn't speak to her?
She didn't speak to her for a whole month. Now, I want you to use your imagination for a 7-year-old child who this is like her mother, the affection, the only affection she known. And all of a sudden, this Julia is not talking. She won't even say hello to her. She looks sad, look at her sad, won't talk to her.
Well, she acknowledges her by looking at her? Or she
just looks sad, but she wouldn't say nothing. And you know, naturally, then Sophia would talk to her parents. How come Julia don't speak to me? You know she's no good. I told you she's no good, giving you all these false hope. Look at this Jesus. You see that this Jesus ain't real? Look how mean she's treating you. So all these thoughts now is put in her head. Now they're communicating with her in a negative way towards Julia. Julia, meanwhile, is trying her best to get out of there because she don't want to be arrested. And if she said one thing to her, you know, I guess Julia was, thinking about herself, you know, because she could say something to her, but then what would that do? That she'd be arrested. So she got out of there. For a whole month, she was able to move and get out of there.
So the parents threatened Julia?
Threatened her. And she said, if you
what did they say to her?
If you ever, you're going to be arrested. And they had a lot of power.
If you ever
said one word to my daughter, even said, hello, you're going to be arrested. And at that time, it was really a terrible thing to say you're a Christian, but even worse to dare to try to persuade somebody else's child about Jesus Christ was even a worse crime. So you got to see what the setting. The parents, Sophia's parents, was nervous about this because they had big position in the government, and Julia, she was not too bad off with money, but she didn't have a lot of power with the government. Because this thing about Jesus was secret, but she did this with Julia for 7 years. Like I said, you could imagine this child never talking to her parents about Jesus. And you say, how could that happen? Because they never said that to her. But now, all of a sudden, they have interacting with their daughter. And this is also strange to Sophia. Now they're talking to her about this in a negative way. Jesus,
and bad mouthing Jesus.
Bad mouthing Jesus, almost spitting the name of Jesus out. Not the father, but mainly the mother. The father was not a dominant man, but he, whatever the mother did, he just followed. And then once in a while he did hug her. But now she having interacting with her mother. You have to understand what's going on with this child. Even this negative is against Julia, but it's still, she getting some feedback from her mother. Some type of action from her mother. Maybe not a positive affection. And yet she's torn up inside. She liked that she's talking to her mother. She liked it. So you gotta imagine, you ask the question, how could this affect the child just because that little thing happened? It did affect her all her life. So she never seen Julia again. Imagine never seeing somebody who basically raised you and loved you and hugged you again, and now she's just around her mother and father who's in a negative tone about Jesus and continue to batter her. This Jesus and this Jesus that. So after so many years, she even wrote a diary. She wrote in her diary.
Before you go to the diary, so from age 4 to age 7, she was basically raised by Julia.
from the time she came out of the womb.
Okay, for 7 years.
For 7 years.
Okay, all she knew was Julia.
Yeah, all she knew was Julia. And the parents was cold in the background. Maybe once in a while the father might hug her, but not that much. But the mother had no interaction with her at all. But now imagine she's torn because now her mother is interacting with her.
So now at age 7, she's cut off from Julia.
Julia altogether.
And then she never sees.
She sees her. If it was Julia would have left
that same night,
it might have been different.
Yeah.
But she sees the woman. Then she speaks to her.
30 days.
For 30 days. Julia, what's wrong? Why you don't speak? And she just keep on walking. And you don't have to be a psychiatrist to figure that out, what's going to happen to a child. And the mother's giving negative feedback. This is why.
For the 30 days, she's getting all this negative feedback. The lady's not responding.
She's not responding. Just all this cut off. And you can see this is the root. And from then on, and she wrote in her diary, why, Julia, are you upset? She was just all she wrote in the diary over and over. And I could read what she says in the diary. Dear diary.